You think you can kill us all? Emma's voice was steady, but her heart pounded in her chest. She wasn't afraid. She couldn't afford to be. She stood in the shadow of Zale, the alien teacher, whose cruel boasts about exterminating humanity had always echoed in her ears. Her world had been ravaged by war, and now, here he was, weakened, vulnerable, but still oozing arrogance. The very same monster that had wiped out so many of her people. I've survived your kind before, she muttered, her voice cold as the barren ground beneath her feet. Zale sneered, his red skin almost glowing in the twilight, his piercing blue eyes locked on hers as if daring her to make the first move. But Emma wasn't just any survivor. She wasn't the woman she had been when they first met. The girl who trembled in the face of destruction had died long ago. In her place stood a warrior, forged in the fires of war, her mind sharp as a blade. You're no better than the others, he spat. Humanity is weak. You can never defeat me. But he was wrong. Emma's hand tightened around her blaster, the metal cool against her palm. She was tired of hearing those words from every alien she met. Weak, feeble, pathetic, and she was sick of proving them wrong. You'll regret underestimating us, she said, taking a slow, deliberate step forward. Zale's lips curled into a smirk as he staggered, still trying to steady himself. He was a powerful being, but he was also broken, physically and mentally, from the battle that had nearly destroyed him. His arrogance didn't let him see that, though. He saw her as nothing more than a threat that would be easy to squash. Emma's every instinct screamed at her to end it, to finish him off right then and there, but something held her back. She'd seen what destruction could do, and she wasn't here for revenge. I don't need to kill you to make my point, Emma said, her voice dripping with confidence. You're already defeated. Zale froze, his eyes widening slightly. Was this human actually more powerful than he thought? He'd underestimated her. Again, in the distance, the wind howled, carrying with it the scent of smoke and ash, the aftermath of a war that had already cost too many lives. But Emma stood her ground, unshaken. You think I'll beg for mercy? Zale challenged, though his words were laced with doubt. I don't need your mercy, she replied. I just need you to understand. Humanity isn't done yet, and we're not afraid of you anymore. For the first time, Zale looked uncertain. His gaze flickered to her weapon, then back to her face. He saw strength in her eyes that no alien had ever seen in a human before. You think this will change everything? He asked, his voice softer now, almost human. Emma didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned, looking out over the desolate battlefield that had once been a thriving city. It already has, she whispered. And for the first time, she didn't feel the weight of his threats. She felt free. Emma stood in the silence of the wasteland, the wind howling as it swept across the cracked earth. Zale, the alien teacher, was still processing her words. His arrogant mask was starting to crack, replaced by something more vulnerable. Emma could feel the tension hanging between them like a storm ready to break. She had given him the chance to leave with his life, but it was clear he wasn't ready to accept that. You think this is over? Zale's voice was a low growl, his eyes narrowing as he struggled to rise to his feet. Emma didn't flinch. She stood tall, her eyes fixed on him with unwavering determination. It is, she said simply. Zale's fists clenched at his sides, his alien skin flickering with the remnants of his old pride. You think your words will change me? You think humanity can just walk away from what we've done to you? Emma's gaze softened. She didn't need to explain herself. She didn't need to justify why she fought. She was done with those who saw humanity as weak. Done with those who thought they could crush her spirit. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Emma replied, her voice steady and sure. But I won't be silenced. I won't let you keep telling us we're worthless. Zale stood taller now, still wincing from his injuries. He didn't expect this. He didn't expect someone like Emma, someone so human, to stand up to him this way. His pride, once unshakable, was crumbling. You are right about one thing, Zale said, his voice barely above a whisper. I have underestimated you. All of you. Emma's heart skipped a beat, but she didn't show it. She'd won, not with brute force, but with resilience, with the unyielding strength that came from knowing who she was and what she stood for. You should have seen us sooner, she said softly, turning away, her gaze sweeping over the devastation that surrounded them. The echoes of battle still hung in the air, but in that moment, Emma felt a strange peace. She wasn't just surviving. She was fighting for something bigger than herself. The future. The promise of a world where humans were no longer underestimated. Zale's voice stopped her as she began to walk away. "What happens now?" he asked, a hint of curiosity in his voice. Emma paused, not looking back. "Now we rebuild. And we make sure you never forget what you've learned here." The wind picked up again, a gust blowing dust and ash into the air. But Emma stood tall, knowing this was just the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where humanity's voice would finally be heard. Emma looked out over the horizon, the desolation stretching for miles. The wind howled, carrying the scent of burnt ash and the faint smell of decay. A once thriving world now lay in ruins, but Emma was resolute. She had stood her ground against Zale, the alien teacher who had once boasted of wiping out humanity, and now she was ready to take the next step. "Do you ever wonder," Zale's voice interrupted, soft yet tinged with the weariness of defeat, "if we will ever truly be able to rebuild what we've lost?" Emma turned to face him, her expression hard but not unkind. He had fallen silent since their confrontation, his arrogant demeanor replaced by a deep, internal struggle. She saw it now, the cracks in his facade, the uncertainty. "We don't rebuild what we've lost," she replied, her voice steady. "We build something new." Zale studied her for a long moment, as if trying to reconcile the human he had once dismissed with the warrior who had just shattered his worldview. "Something better?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. Emma nodded. "Yes, something better." As they spoke, the remnants of their previous battle lay scattered across the wasteland. The destruction was undeniable, but Emma refused to let it define her. She had seen enough destruction in her life to last 1,000 lifetimes. What mattered now was what came next, and that was something worth fighting for. "I used to think we were just another species doomed to fall," Zale continued, his voice still filled with disbelief. "But after everything I've seen, maybe you're right. Maybe you are different." Emma didn't respond at first. Instead, she looked out at the barren landscape, her mind racing with the possibilities. She knew that humanity had the strength to survive, to adapt, to thrive even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. But the real question was whether they could rebuild a world that wasn't just a reflection of the past. Could they create something truly new? "It's not just about survival anymore," Emma said finally. "It's about making the world better for those who come after us." Zale's eyes softened, and for the first time, he looked at Emma not as a threat, but as an equal. "And you think that's possible?" he asked, his voice still tentative. Emma's gaze was unwavering as she met his eyes. "I know it is," she said firmly. The silence between them stretched on, not uncomfortable, but filled with the weight of the truth. They both knew that their journey was far from over. The world around them might have been broken, but within that brokenness, there was hope. Hope that, in time, things could be rebuilt. Hope that, together, they could create something stronger than what had been lost. Emma turned away, feeling the cool wind against her face. "Let's get to work," she said, the determination in her voice unmistakable. And as she walked toward the horizon, she knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but it was one worth walking. For herself, for humanity, and for the future they would build. Zale followed behind, unsure of what the future held, but ready to face it alongside the human who had just shown him what it meant to fight for something greater than themselves. Emma and Zale walked side by side across the ruins of what was once a thriving city. The air was thick with the remnants of smoke, and the distant echoes of collapsing buildings still rang in their ears. Yet, despite the destruction, there was something undeniable in the air, a sense of change, of rebirth. Emma felt it. She could see the potential for a new beginning, even in the midst of all this devastation. "I've seen what your kind is capable of," Zale said, breaking the silence between them. His voice, though weary, carried a hint of admiration. Emma glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "And what do you think of us now?" she asked, her voice steady. Zale paused for a moment, his alien eyes searching the horizon. I think I misunderstood you. All of you." His words were quiet, but there was a weight to them that made Emma's heart beat a little faster. "It's not too late to change," she said, her gaze never leaving the path ahead. "But we can't do it alone. We need to work together." Zale nodded slowly, as if considering her words. "I never thought I would say this," but I think you might be right, he admitted. Maybe we've all been too focused on our differences to see what we could accomplish together. Emma allowed herself a small smile. It was a rare moment of mutual understanding, and it felt like a victory in itself. But she knew the hard part was just beginning. There's still a long way to go, she said, her tone turning serious once more. We need to rebuild. Not just the buildings, but everything. The way we think, the way we live. Zale's eyes flickered with something like uncertainty. How do we even begin, he asked. With trust, Emma replied. And with the understanding that we are all in this together. No one is more important than the other. Not anymore. They continued walking, each step a reminder of how far they had come, and how much farther they still had to go. The city around them was in ruins, but there was life in their footsteps, in their resolve. Emma had fought for survival, but now, she was fighting for a future. A future where humanity, and perhaps even the aliens, could stand side by side, no longer divided by fear or pride. You've shown me something I didn't believe was possible, Zale said after a long silence. Hope, and I'm not ready to give up on it. Emma turned her head slightly to meet his gaze, her eyes full of determination. Neither am I, she said. And in that moment, she knew. No matter the challenges that lay ahead, they would face them together. For the first time in a long while, she felt like there was something worth fighting for beyond survival. It was the beginning of something new, something greater than either of them could have imagined. The journey ahead was uncertain, but Emma felt the weight of responsibility settle over her like a mantle. They had come so far, but there was still so much to do. The ruins of the city stretched out before her, a silent witness to the past. She knew that rebuilding would take more than just strength, it would require unity. The path would be difficult, but it was a path worth walking. Beside her, Zale walked silently, his expression thoughtful. He had changed in ways Emma had never imagined. Once a proud alien warrior, he had now become a partner, one she could rely on as they worked towards something bigger than themselves. What do we do first? Zale asked, his voice steady but tinged with the weight of uncertainty. Emma paused, taking in the vast expanse of destruction around them. The city was a shell of what it had been, but it was not beyond saving. First, she said, her voice calm but resolute. We start with the people. They need to see that they're not alone, that there is hope. Zale nodded slowly, understanding the depth of her words. And after that, he asked. Emma turned to him, her eyes meeting his with determination. After that, we rebuild trust. Between the humans, between the aliens, between everyone. Trust is the foundation of everything. Without it, nothing will work. Zale looked out over the city, his eyes reflecting the sadness and hope intertwined in the destruction around them. It sounds impossible, he said, his voice quiet. But perhaps, for the first time, I'm willing to believe in the impossible. Emma's heart stirred. She had fought for survival. She had fought for vengeance. But now, she was fighting for something else, something that felt more important than all of it. A future where peace was possible. It's not impossible, she replied, her voice firm. Not if we do it together. The days that followed were filled with hard work, but also with hope. They set out to find the scattered survivors, to bring them together and begin the process of rebuilding. It wasn't easy. Many were still afraid, still clinging to the old ways of division and mistrust. But Emma and Zale kept pushing forward, one step at a time. They didn't ask for perfection. They only asked for the chance to try. There were moments when it seemed like the weight of the task would crush them, when the old wounds would resurface and the old fears would creep in. But each time, they found strength in each other. Emma would look at Zale, and Zale would look at her, and in that silent exchange, they knew they weren't alone. Together, they began to build not just the city, but a new world. One where the past mistakes could be left behind, and a new future could be forged from the ashes of the old. And as they worked, Emma began to believe, truly believe, that it was possible. That despite everything, despite the odds, they could make something better, something worth fighting for. The world around them may have been broken, but Emma was determined to prove that it was not beyond repair. As Emma and Zale continued their efforts, the days turned into weeks, and the weeks began to show small signs of progress. The people they had gathered were starting to trust each other, slowly but surely. Emma could feel the change in the air. It wasn't immediate, but it was real. They had managed to establish a small community, one built on cooperation and shared purpose. No longer was it just about surviving. It was about living, about creating something that could last. One evening, after a long day of planning and organizing, Emma and Zale sat together on the edge of what remained of a building. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow over the horizon. "Do you ever wonder," Zale said, breaking the silence, "if this will ever truly work? If all this effort will really make a difference?" Emma looked out at the people working below, some of them still carrying the scars of the past, but all of them working toward the same goal. "I don't wonder," she replied softly. "I believe it will." Zale seemed to consider her words for a moment. He had seen so much destruction, so much loss, that it was hard for him to believe in anything anymore. But Emma was different. She had shown him a new path, a path that was not defined by war and violence, but by the possibility of something better. "You have an incredible amount of faith," Zale remarked. "In what?" Emma asked, her eyes meeting his. "In us," Zale said quietly. "In all of us. In the idea that we can rebuild, no matter what we've done." Emma smiled slightly, but there was a seriousness to her expression. "It's not about faith," she said. "It's about action. We make the change. No one is going to do it for us." Zale nodded, his gaze drifting to the horizon. "I've never known a human like you," he admitted. "You're more than just a survivor. You're a force." Emma felt the weight of his words, but she wasn't sure how to respond. She wasn't sure she had a choice in the matter. She couldn't walk away, not when there was so much at stake. "We're all forces, Zale," she said after a moment. "We just have to choose which side we're on." Zale's eyes met hers again, and for the first time, Emma saw something different in his expression. It was a spark of hope, something that hadn't been there before. "Then I choose this," he said firmly. Emma's heart swelled, knowing that this journey wasn't hers alone anymore. They had come so far, and they would continue, side by side. The weight of the past wasn't gone, but it no longer held them captive. The future was theirs to shape. The people below them were living proof of that. As the sun dipped lower, casting the world in shadows and light, Emma knew that they were on the right path. It wouldn't be easy, but with every step, they were one step closer to the world they dreamed of. Together, they would rebuild. And this time, it would be different. The days passed, and the small community that Emma and Zale had worked so hard to establish began to show signs of true growth. People who had once been divided by fear and distrust now worked side by side, rebuilding what had been lost. There were moments of hesitation, of course, but with every step forward, the walls of uncertainty began to crumble. Emma stood on the outskirts of the community one morning, watching the sun rise over the broken cityscape. She had seen so much destruction, but today, for the first time, she saw something else, possibility. "This is just the beginning," she whispered to herself, more to steady her own thoughts than anything else. Zale approached quietly from behind, his heavy boots barely making a sound on the cracked earth. He had become a part of this new world, just as she had. "You're up early," Zale said, his voice soft but strong. Emma turned to face him, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted. "There's too much work to do, too many things still to fix." Zale nodded, his red skin contrasting against the morning light. "But we're doing it," he said, looking over the makeshift buildings and the people working diligently in the distance. "It's happening." Emma studied him for a moment, taking in the change in him. The alien who had once seen humans as weak, as beneath him, now stood beside her as an equal. She had seen the transformation in his eyes, the way he no longer spoke with the same arrogance, the same sense of superiority. In his place stood someone who understood that survival wasn't enough. It was about rebuilding, about creating something better. "We've come a long way," she said, her voice filled with quiet pride. Zale turned his gaze to the horizon, his expression thoughtful. "And we still have a long way to go," he replied. Emma nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She had never thought it would be easy, but she had hoped it would be worth it. "I never thought I'd see the day when humans and aliens work together like this," Zale said, almost as if to himself. "I didn't think it was possible." "It wasn't possible until we decided to make it happen," Emma replied. "And we will keep making it happen, one step at a time." Zale turned to her, his eyes searching hers. "I believe you," he said, his voice steady. Emma smiled, feeling the warmth of his words settle in her chest. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were creators, Together, they would build something new, something that could stand the test of time. As the sun rose higher, Emma knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but it was a road they would walk together. For the first time, she felt a sense of peace. The future was theirs to shape, and no matter what obstacles came their way, they would face them. Together, they had already proven that they could rebuild what was broken, and they would do it again, until the world they had dreamed of was no longer a dream, but a reality. As time passed, the small community grew stronger, its members finding a sense of purpose in rebuilding their lives. Emma and Zale stood at the edge of the settlement one afternoon, watching the work continue. The once ruined landscape was now beginning to show signs of life. New homes were being built, crops were being planted, and people who had once feared each other were now working together. Emma could feel the pulse of progress, steady and strong. "I never thought I would see a day like this," Zale said quietly, his voice tinged with awe. He was still adjusting to the changes, but he had come to understand that the future was being shaped by the hands of those who believed in it. "You didn't think it was possible?" Emma asked, turning her gaze to him. Zale shook his head, a thoughtful expression on his face. "No, not in the way you envisioned it. But now, I see that it's not about what we thought could happen. It's about what we're willing to make happen." Emma smiled, feeling the weight of his words. They had both come a long way from their first meeting, when Zale had seen her as nothing more than a human to be discarded. Now, they were allies, partners in a mission that was bigger than either of them. "We've only just begun," Emma said, her voice steady and determined. "This is just the foundation. There's still so much more to do." Zale nodded, his gaze shifting to the horizon. "I never realized how much could be accomplished when people are willing to work together, when they put aside their differences and focus on what they can build." Emma followed his gaze, watching the people below her, working side by side, helping each other, sharing their skills and knowledge. It was a sight she had never imagined in her wildest dreams. "It's not perfect," Emma said softly, "but nothing ever is. Perfection isn't the goal. It's the journey, the effort, the change we can make along the way." Zale turned to her, his eyes filled with something close to admiration. "You have a way of seeing things," he said, his voice low. "I don't know if I would have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. That's what makes you different." Emma looked at him, her heart swelling with a quiet pride. "I'm not different, Zale. We're all capable of making this happen. It's about having the courage to try, even when it seems impossible." They stood in silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. The world around them was still scarred from the war, but there was hope now. Hope that they could heal, rebuild, and create something new together. "Do you think we can ever make the old world the way it was?" Zale asked, his voice breaking the quiet. Emma shook her head slowly. "No, the old world is gone, but we can make a new one. A better one." Zale glanced at her, his eyes searching hers for any hint of doubt, but found none. "And we'll do it together," he said, his voice full of certainty. Emma smiled, her heart light. Together. As the last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma felt the weight of the future settle in her chest. It was a future filled with possibility, with challenges, yes, but also with the power to overcome them. And as long as they kept moving forward, there was nothing they couldn't do. The world wasn't done with them yet, and neither were they. With each new day, they would rebuild, piece by piece, step by step, until the world they dreamed of was finally within their reach. Months passed, and the world Emma and Zale had worked so hard to rebuild was starting to flourish. The once barren wasteland now held signs of life. Children laughed and played in the streets, while adults worked together to grow crops, build structures, and share knowledge. The city was slowly but steadily being transformed. As the community continued to thrive, Emma stood on the balcony of a newly built building, watching the busy streets below. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden hue over the land. The work wasn't easy, but it was worth it. "I never thought I'd see this day." Zale's voice broke the silence as he stepped up beside her. He had changed so much, from the alien who once believed in the superiority of his race to someone who saw the value in unity, in cooperation. Emma glanced at him, her eyes softening. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she said. "I didn't believe it at first," Zale admitted, his voice quiet, almost reverent. "But you showed me that it was possible." Emma smiled, feeling a sense of pride swell within her. The path had been difficult, but each step had been worth it. We all showed each other, she said. We built this together. Zale nodded, his gaze drifting to the horizon. We did, he agreed. But there's still much to be done. Emma's smile faded slightly, but she didn't let the uncertainty creep in. She had learned that progress was not linear. It was full of setbacks, moments of doubt, and challenges. But it was also full of victories, however small, that made it all worthwhile. I know, she said, her voice steady. But we've already proven that we can do it. And we'll keep proving it, day by day. Zale turned to her, a faint smile on his lips. You've taught me something important, he said. Something I never expected to learn. Emma raised an eyebrow. What's that? That strength isn't about power or dominance, Zale said thoughtfully. It's about resilience. It's about the will to keep going, no matter what. Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. You're right, she said quietly. And we're not just fighting to survive anymore. We're fighting to build something better, something lasting. Zale's eyes met hers, and for a moment, they stood in silence, both of them taking in the significance of those words. The world around them was still scarred, but it was healing. Together, they had laid the foundation for something new, something that could stand the test of time. Do you ever wonder what the future will look like? Zale asked, breaking the silence. Emma looked out at the bustling streets below, where people of all races and backgrounds worked together. It was a vision of hope, of a future where differences were celebrated, not feared. I think it will be beautiful, she said, because we're going to make it that way. Zale stood beside her, looking out over the city they had helped rebuild. We've already made a start, he said softly. Emma smiled, her heart full. And we'll keep building. Together. They watched the sun dip below the horizon, knowing that the journey ahead would still be long. But for the first time, they were certain that they were on the right path. The future was in their hands, and it was brighter than they had ever dared to dream.